Alrighty, what's up guys? It's me, Connor, and I said I was going to do Gaunt's Ghost first, but this bad boy came in the mail today, and I read up to 5 chapters, so I figured we'd do a little mini review and kind of get it out of the way right now. So, Valdor, again, I'm just gonna, because I'm happy I have it, I like to have the physical copies of the books. So, by Chris Wright, however you want to say, I don't really know how to say his name, but so far I'm really digging it. This is a really good glimpse into I think the end of the Unification Wars, if I'm being correct. So, right off the bat, of course, this is the birth of the Imperium, so we're getting, bits and pieces, little tidbits of lore about Old Night, the Age of Strife, some Dark Age stuff maybe, but this is basically right now the first 5 chapters are kind of setting up how the Emperor is building, Terra's capital in the Himalayas and all that. And there's not a lot I can really talk about because not much has occurred. This is really dialogue heavy so far, and we're introduced to someone called Kandawire, who's a High Lord. Now, at first, I was confused because I didn't think the High Lords were set up yet as a system for Terra. But it seems now that because I think it was sort of inferring that unification's pretty much almost achieved, that Terra is basically the big, project that's being built right now. And since unification's pretty much all but assured, Kandawire is sort of getting set up in this government positional role of the High Lords that are, I guess, either being formed or have already formed. But, she's followed around by this person named Sivu, who I guess is her assistant and whatnot. So, again, we kind of get to see this really interesting, because Kandawire goes into some little tidbits about how technology doesn't work anymore, or how nothing works, because this was, I guess, during the war for Unity when it was still very large, and Terra was basically sectioned off by warlords. Like, there's mentions of, Albia, Europa, Afric, which is supposed to be Africa, Pan-Pacific kingdoms and whatnot. So we're getting a really good glimpse of what life was like before everything, before 40K, before 30K. There's no Great Crusade yet. We're just seeing the birth, literally, as the title implies, the birth of the Imperium. She sees the Aquila, however it's said, with the eagle and the lightning bolts and everyone. And we're kind of getting the glimpses to what's going on. And we see the Emperor's plan being enacted. But this also comes into question, too, because Kandawire talks to Valdor and they have an interview. And he's like, well, if you really want to know, we're already behind on the plan, but here's what we're doing. And essentially he gives her a rundown of what's been going on and how Terra's being built, and the Administratum is a newly introduced thing. And it's bringing people out of poverty. It seems to be portrayed as this really good thing. But then, we go further and further as this interview goes on, and she brings up this place called Maland Sen, which is, I guess, a really big battle and location as well, where Valdor was kind of recounting his tale of what was going on there. And he said, we were getting rid of, sorcery. And she, and she being Kandawire was really confused. And she's like, bro, what do you mean sorcery? And he's saying how he had to fight this guy called the Priest King, and he was fighting with none other than, and I'm going to read it right now because I don't remember what it was, what he said, really. It was Legio, I think. Legio. What did he give them? He gave the Thunder Warriors a really, a gothic name or whatever it was. Okay. For the Cata-Aegis, which then he would say would be Thunder Warriors. And then he says, Kandawire says, okay, so tell me about their Primarch. So immediately I'm like, oh shit, are we getting the 2, Primarchs that are unknown and hidden away and did something so horrible that Malkador had to place a mental block on all the other Primarchs? No. So Primarch was being used in the as a title for a warrior who was exceptional and proved exceptional worth and was commanded, to a higher rank, sort of. So Primarch in this instance in context was used to describe the, general captain of whoever was with these Thunder Warriors at this time. So yes, Primarch in this instance means something completely different from what we're used to. And it was really cool because he's talking about the Witch King or Priest King and how he's just there. The conquest to destroy chaos has always been present now. It's what looks like it's being inferred to, as well as during the Unification Wars. Chaos has always had a lingering presence on Terra and just in, the setting in general. So we're getting, again, this is more of an introductory to everything so far pre-Imperium, as the title suggests. But you're still only learning little bits and pieces. You're not getting everything thrown at you. And I honestly like this approach because I enjoy when, authors take the time to their world building is present, but it also, when you get answers, it leads to more questions. Like, what about the perspectives of these other rival warlords? Who, the Emperor, whenever we find out something about him, it always leads to more questions. And I'm a big fan of when that's done in Warhammer novels, especially, because if we were to have books on, the War in Heaven and maybe, the Lost Primarch, either them or the War of the False Primarch, these little blurbs of lore, if we were to get full books on these, it would maybe kill the mystique and mystery that we already have, because some things should just remain that, in setting mysteries. That we shouldn't really have knowledge of everything. I've always thought that the loss of knowledge in 40K as a setting is way more interesting than if they had said knowledge, because they're always finding these new, STCs and new Dark Age technology, and it's fascinating to see how advanced technology was compared to even 30K, even compared to 40K. Like, there's still, the loss of knowledge has always been a really cool theme. But there's also another character who was briefly mentioned who I kind of took a liking to. His name was Ushotan, and he was another custodian who essentially told Valdor, and I'm going to read it for you. Okay, he was laughing when we met. He had a vivid light in his eyes. I thought he looked like a ghost of all murders. What did he say? He told me that he understood for the first time the reason he had been made. He told me that I would never feel the same way, and that he pitied me for that. So, really good line right off the bat. It was interesting because Valdor is special. The book kind of already infers that as such, because when you read the beginning of it, there's like this creation. This is sort of like the prologue, and I'll read it for you. So, Origin, Luna, Transit Station, Alpha, no. Prior Imperial Codex, General Repository Prior, Incognita. This is basically a transpondence interview being recorded or something of that nature. Awake? Please take your time. Who? Who are you? You do not remember your name. No. Would you tell me if you did? I do not know. You would. From this day to the end of days, you would tell me anything I asked of you if you knew it. Yes. So there's real back and forth in the prologue of this book. And if I'm thinking correctly, and if I'm theorizing, if the brain's doing its job, this is when, I guess, either the Emperor creates Malcador or goes through all the, trials and tribulations to go get Valdor. I may have said Malcador. Refuse that. Don't listen to that. That was supposed to be Valdor. So, this is really interesting too, because he talks to Valdor, he being the Emperor, talks to Valdor about various things. Can I trust you? And, do you know what my plan is? Yes. Do you know the risks? Yes. Total ruin and, annihilation if we fail. Good. Now tell me this, knowing all this, knowing the risks. Why did I make you? He doesn't speak, and then the Emperor says speak, and then it's cut off from that. We don't know. But I'm telling you. So the appeal so far in this book, besides, getting to see the Imperium before it's the Imperium, is the mysteries, right? So we get the first mystery that we were already kind of thrown in our face. Is this Valdor and the Emperor talking? I feel like if my media literacy is on point right now, because let's be, I have the IQ of a 5th grader, Yes, that should be those two talking, at least at the very, bottom of that. And then there's the second part of that conversation that kind of led me to another question. How much does the Emperor know? So, of course, people like to characterize the Emperor as either all-knowing or just a man who's really smart because he's been around a long time and makes dumb mistakes, or just an idiot. All three can be equally applicable to him. I'm not saying you need to have a solid definition of how you would define the character. That's totally cool. But when he talks about, do you know my plan? And they have this innate conversation, and then he says, along the lines of, I think this is Valdor in this instance. It's not made clear who's talking to who, but this is how I'm interpreting it. He says, you've made a bargain and you've become weaker and stronger, but these bargains are for gods, although I'm not a god. And essentially, this term of the bargain comes up again, and it says the emperor's become weaker in order to become stronger. And this can be implied as him losing bits and parts of his soul, becoming more machine-like logical, and instead casting away emotions that would further hinder what would later be the Great Crusade. There's a lot of theories that we can get into on this, and I'm not sure I want to get into it all because I have a lot of theories, and half of them may just be nonsense, half of them could be super valid and cool maybe, but this is one of those things, like I said before, the more we learn, the less we actually learn because there's more mysteries in the little tidbits that are revealed to us. So that's really cool. And that's kind of the appeal I'm getting so far from the first 5 chapters. All these secrets and mysteries of old Terra are really compelling because we find out that life is awful and disgusting on Terra, and it really sucks regardless. And you know what? It's cool. It's cool that you were learning all this stuff. And there's also another sentence here that really stood out to me. I could read it, but I'm not going to paraphrase it, and then I'll read it to y'all. But essentially, Valdor, I think, was talking to another custodian, and I don't remember his name, but he is essentially talking about the Emperor's plans and all this. And he says something along the lines of, you don't really know how his existence is, because think about it this way, he's so strong, he has to be careful with everything, else it will break. And, it's something along the lines of if you've ever watched anime, Yujiro or like Gojo, to be strong is to be separated from everyone, and that is a certain type of solitude that no one can understand except the strongest. And it stuck out to me because it wasn't, it was placed weirdly, not in a bad way. It was just something I don't think we think about when we think of the Emperor from his perspective, because I don't think there's any book or excerpt where we really see things from his perspective, or we do maybe Master of Mankind, but I've never read that. But it's an interesting line because, there's two versions of the Emperor, really. The man with the plan or the dumbass who's really just been winging it, and it's either he's only strong enough to make everyone do it his way or the highway type deal. So, it's that I can't explain why it stuck out to me the way it did, but it's just a cool line to think about from this man who nobody knows. Everyone's got a different interpretation of the Emperor, and this is even in universe as well. He uses glamours and stuff. Really, it's just, more mystery. That's really all this is. We're getting a baseline level of knowledge thrown at us with more and more stuff we need to fill in for ourselves to make the story more interesting or more compelling. So, really out of the way, I've been enjoying the book so far. And if I had any criticisms, it would be this. Maybe when I'm reading it, I'm having trouble really distinguishing if I'm jumping back and forth in time, like pre-Unity, and then we're going back to almost a post-Unity Terra. So that can be a little confusing. I feel like the book could have maybe so far done a little bit better job of clarifying the timelines, but that could also just be me kind of not really getting everything that's on paper, and I might have to reread it in order to understand it a little bit better, because sometimes I'm getting Old Knight confused with the Age of Strife, or if those are used interchangeably. And, I have a baseline knowledge of all this Unity stuff. So, all in all, overall thoughts, I'm really digging Valdor, and I love seeing that the pre-Imperium stuff, because it's not something that even gets remotely talked about in 40K. And reading through the Heresy as well, we don't really get a lot of Age of Strife, Dark Age callbacks all that much yet anyway. I'm only like 7 books in, but overall, I would say this is a really good book. And if you were ever interested in knowing about, pre-Imperium Terra, Unification Wars, Thunder Warriors being mentioned, and all that, and other custodians and all that cool shit, I really would recommend giving this, checking it out. It's not a long book either. Like, this isn't very daunting. So I would really recommend it giving a try. And I just found out that Gaunt's Ghost just arrived at my front door. So if you like this little mini review, it's I appreciate it. So I also recommend you subscribe if you want to, because again, I'm gonna do the first 5 chapters of Gaunt's Ghosts and come back to you guys. And that's pretty much it. See ya.